here is from Northern California. Ryan, I see a few others. Byron. All right, what about Central Coast? All right, and lastly, do we have anyone from outside of these three sections? Eric, makes sense. Coming to us from
I'm
San
a former
Diego.
member of the Bay Area section, if that counts.
It's whatever you want.
Sure.
So, all right, well, gonna move on then to the announcements. So we'll start with Central Coast. So Vidhi, take it away.
Hi, I will keep it pretty brief on our end. Just a general call. If anyone would like to get more involved, we'll have our officer elections. Ballots will go out in November for our December meeting. That is coming up in a couple months here, so wanted to put it on everyone's radar and make sure that if you want to get involved, to let myself or Travis Lowe know. Yeah, we'd love to have you join the team.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the Northern California section. Ryan, either you or I don't know if Zach's here.
We're not seeing them on the list. I think the big thing we wanted to plug is we do have our annual golf tournament on October 28th. So look in your inbox. There should be a couple messages about that going out.
All right. And for the Bay Area section, we also have our elections coming up. You should see in your emails, we have a call for nominations, which are due on October 21st. As well, our next meeting is with Hans Larson, the Public Works Director over at Fremont. That one will be October 20th, 12 p.m., also a virtual meeting. And lastly, for the announcements, do we have anyone from the Western District here who would like to give any announcements on behalf of the Western District? Usually Mark or Kimberly's here, but I'm not seeing them. Hearing nothing, go ahead. No. All right, hearing nothing, I'll move on. So for this second icebreaker, just asking a general question, please feel free to put your answer in the chat. What is your favorite stretch of a two-lane highway? Topic of today is the HCM and updates to the HCM. So defining a two-lane highway today as what would be applicable for the HCM Chapter 15 two-way highway methodology. Feel free to share your answers in the chat. I see State Route 1 in Big Sur. I was also going to share State Route 1, although for me, it's a little bit further down, maybe San Simeon area. I'm sure we'll see a lot of State Route 1s. Ooh, Highway 128, Lauren, where is that?
It's on your way. If you ever go to Mendocino, it's one way to get there. You can either take Highway 1 up to Mendocino, or you go through Cloverdale. You take 101 through Cloverdale, and then 128 starts from there. It also goes through like St. Helena, I think, too.
Sounds scenic.
Yes.
And the East End is beautiful winters in Yolo County.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Well, perfect. I think that is good. So let's move on to our feature presentation, and I'll turn it over to Eric. So thank you for being here, Eric, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can take it away.
Yes, thank you. And thanks very much for having me. I'm going to get this going here. Let's see. Here we go. How's that look? Is that all right? Yep. See a thumbs
Looks
up?
good.
Great. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm here to talk about the new Highway Capacity Manual, the seventh edition that was just came out late last year. And what I want to do in this presentation is kind of give you a brief overview. The Highway Capacity Manual is very detailed. There's a lot of information. So I want to give you an idea of what's in there. And for most people, a brief overview is good enough, because what you need to know is what's in the manual. And then if you need it, you know where to look. And if you don't, you can just go on with your day-to-day business. But for some people, you're going to look at this and say, hey, I'd really like to know more about this. And there are more detailed presentations that are available from TRB and ITE, and MICTRANS in particular does a nice presentation. And you can get, say a 2-hour or a 8-hour, whatever length of presentation. So there's a lot more information if you're interested. Also, for folks who attended the Western District meeting in Palm Springs this summer, this is going to be kind of similar to what I did at that meeting. I'm going to slow it down a little bit because we've got a little more time, and I'll add a few comments, but it would be very similar to what I've done. Also, if other folks have already seen a Highway Capacity Manual presentation, this might be a little different, because everybody who works on the Highway Capacity Manual has different opinions, and I might tell you something that you wouldn't have heard from someone else. So with that said, these are the topics I want to cover. I want to talk about what is the Highway Capacity Manual and why does it still matter? Why does it still matter? Because there's so much going on in our world today with VMT and smart streets and simulation and everything we're doing, that the Highway Capacity Manual, that used to be kind of one of the main documents we use, is now kind of one of many. So I want to talk about how it fits into the whole spectrum of what we're doing. And then I want to talk about the 4 areas, the key areas where the 7th edition has changed what's going on in the manual. Those being capacity effects of connected and automated vehicles, new 2-lane highway procedure, pedestrian methods, and network analysis. And then I'll have a few concluding remarks about the Highway Capacity Committee that maintains this manual. So just to see where the Highway Capacity Manual fits, I put this slide together, which gives you my ideas on what are the key things that transportation engineers and planners do. And so, first of all, safety, that's probably the most important thing any of us does, and needs no explanation. How many people or vehicles are using the system now? How's the system operating is an important thing that many of us focus on. Some of us focus on how many people or vehicles will use the system in the future, traffic forecasting. What is the effect of the system on the environment? Very, very important in California with CEQA. What is the capacity of the system? How many vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, or whatever can fit into the system and allow it to operate adequately? And then what is the experience of the people who are users of the system? So the last 2 of those bullets are addressed by the Highway Capacity Manual, and it is one of the key places to look for answers to those 2 questions. So also you can think about what are the other ways of looking at capacity and quality of level service. So we've got the Highway Capacity Manual, you've got software, computational engines. Something like Synchro would be an example of a computational engine that's different from the Highway Capacity Manual, that provides similar answers. And you've got traffic simulation, number of traffic simulation programs that look at the same issue, highway capacity, but in a different way by simulating the vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles and how they interact with each other. And then I put other to sort of represent everything else, but the thing I would think of most is sort of these kind of back of the envelope calculation tools that many of you use, that if you just want to get a quick answer with paper and pencil or a calculator, you can get an idea of the capacity of a system very quickly just using sketch planning techniques. So the Highway Capacity Manual has been around for a very long time. The first edition was in 1950. That was way before my time. New editions were published in over time, roughly every 5, 10 years, 15 years or so. previously the editions were noted by the year, and now we're starting to try doing 6th edition, 7th edition, but I think people like the years, and we may go back to going to the year of the highway capacity manual rather than the edition. So we'll see how that goes. The highway capacity manual is maintained by the Transportation Research Board's Committee on Highway Capacity and Quality of Service. So there's a whole committee that focuses on this topic and maintains this manual, answers questions, oversees updates. The highway capacity manual is supported by research. That's one of the things that distinguishes this way of calculating capacity from other ways, is that it's very research-based, it's very visible. You can see how the calculations are done, see what they came from, see the background studies. And so that sort of distinguishes it from some of the other ways of doing this. The highway capacity manual, as you can see from the previous editions, is continuously updated to look at improve the methodologies, but also to accommodate new facility types and technologies. And maybe I'll just pause for a minute because I didn't say this before, but talk a little bit about my role. I've been involved with the Highway Capacity Committee way back to actually 1990. Feels strange to say that, but I have been. And I served as a subcommittee member and friend for a while, eventually was a committee member for about 10 years. And now I have the status of former committee member, which basically the Highway Capacity Committee allows its former members to stay around and be active. And the only thing that's different is we don't get to vote anymore, but I'm still active in many ways with the Highway Capacity Manual and the Highway Capacity Committee. So that's how I'm able to stay informed on all this stuff. So to talk about the new 7th edition, and this is similar to the previous edition. There are 4 volumes. Volume 1 is basic concepts, and then volume 2 and 3 are for uninterrupted flow and interrupted flow. And if you think about it, roadway facilities can be classified as either uninterrupted, things like freeways and 2-lane highways and multi-lane highways, where you don't have a traffic control device telling you when to stop and go and so on. And then there's interrupted flow, where this includes signals and unsignalized intersections and roundabouts where there are traffic control devices that are controlling the flow of traffic. So those are just a little bit different ways of looking at it. And volume 2 and volume 3 focus on the different types of flow. And then volume 4 is applications guide and background materials. And the first 3 volumes, you actually have to buy those from TRB or ITE or whoever sells them. And they come either in a printed book or in an ebook, electronic, you can read on your computer, so on. Volume 4 is a website, so that one is available to everybody, and you can get it at the website I'm showing here. And I understand this presentation will be available afterwards, so you don't necessarily have to write down the names of the websites or anything. But Volume 4 is open to viewing from anyone, whether you actually have purchased the Highway Capacity Manual or not. So with that, let's talk about the ways that the 7th edition is different from the previous editions. And I'll start with connected and automated vehicles. This is kind of a fun one because you get to think about the future and automated vehicles and so on and so forth. This topic came about because the first agency that really got interested in this issue was the state of Oregon, because decision makers were asking them, hey, you know, with connected and automated vehicles, we're reading about all this stuff, and they're going to operate more efficiently, and maybe we just won't need to widen roads anymore because, you know, these automated vehicles are going to be here anytime now, and they're going to be more efficient. And the state of Oregon, as well as many of us, said, well, I don't know about that, not so fast. I mean, it's going to take a while for these things to be implemented, and we don't even know the capacity effects. We haven't studied the capacity effects. So the state of Oregon set up what's called a pool fund study, and they got many different states to kind of chip in and do some research. And so the new procedures in the 7th edition are based on the research that was led by the state of Oregon and supported by many states. The different procedures are based on simulation, of course, because you can't go out and measure how a connected and automated vehicle works. We could probably measure one, but you couldn't, measure many of them operating in a system. So it's all based on simulation with assumptions about how the vehicles will interact with each other and how they'll interact with non-automated vehicles as well. The capacity implications are expected far in the future, and the 7th edition talks about some of the things that you would need to think about to forecast when the effects of connected and automated vehicles may be seen on the roadway system. And it's really, I've studied this for quite a while, and I think that the capacity implications are farther in the future than anyone expected when the connected and automated vehicles discussion started, because I think as they've looked deeper and deeper into the process of operating a connected and automated vehicle, they've realized that there are many challenges, and the idea that you can just get in your car and type in your destination and then go to sleep is quite a ways away. And the Highway Capacity Manual talks about that, in addition to talking about the actual capacities that might be expected. And so how this works is that we call it the CAV methodology. It follows the current procedures, but with an adjustment factor. So you basically would go through the procedures that you go through right now for signalized intersections or freeways or whatever you want to do. And then there'll be an adjustment factor at the end. And I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. So the CAV adjustment factor is what we use, and it's kind of like heavy vehicles or any of the other adjustment factors that are in the highway capacity right now. And the adjustment factors are shown in tables like in the lower right, and they all have to do with the proportion of connected and automated vehicles in the traffic stream, because as you go from just a few connected automated vehicles to 100%, the capacity effects are greater and greater. And then in the upper right, the graph kind of shows you what that looks like. This is for freeways, and the different colored lines are different kind of facilities. So the blue line is kind of an idealized facility, and the orange has some problems, maybe narrow lanes or whatever, obstructions, and then the gray has even more obstructions with different base capacities. So the blue is 2,400, the orange is 2,100, and the gray is 1,800. But what you see here is as you increase the penetration of CAVs, the capacity goes up, and these are shown in terms of passenger cars per hour per lane. And you kind of converge on a number something like 3,200 vehicles per hour per lane. And for the idealized roadways, new design, so on, that's about 30% higher than what we're seeing right now. And it kind of contradicts some of the previous research that was done that suggested maybe there would be much higher capacities. But even independently of the Highway Capacity Manual, many researchers have kind of come to this conclusion that maybe 30% or thereabouts is kind of the average. There's a lot of variation, but that's kind of the average increase in capacity that you might see. And the other thing you might note is that if you do have a facility with obstructions or narrow lanes or whatever it is that would perhaps reduce the capacity for human drivers, the automated vehicles don't have that. So you can get bigger increases on facilities where you've got obstructions or other kinds of impediments to capacity. So next I'm going to move on to two-lane highways, and the new HCM methodology is part of a new research project, and it just looks at two-lane highways differently than has been done before. And two-lane highways are one of the areas of the HCM that have been sort of problematic over the years. Things like signals and freeways, those have been figured out pretty well, but some of these different facility types kind of continue to elude us in terms of really understanding how they work. But the first thing to do is in the new methodology is think about what kind of roadway you're looking at. So over on the left, you've got a 2-lane roadway, maybe scenic, very few or no passing areas, double yellow line in the middle. In the middle, you've got a 2-lane highway with a lot of straight stretches, a lot of passing opportunities. And on the right, you've got a roadway where the 2-lane highway opens up to 3 lanes so that you can get a passing lane in one direction or the other at various points, but not the entire facility. So the first thing you do with the new methodology is you look at which type of roadway you're on, and the procedures are different depending on which type of roadway. And what we've seen is that vastly improves the accuracy of the 2-lane procedure. Another thing that has changed, there are many sort of details, but another big thing that's changed in my mind is that way that heavy vehicles are treated. And previously, in the HCM6 methodology, heavy vehicles were treated as passenger car equivalent. So you just figure is a car worth, or is a truck worth 2 cars, 3 cars, whatever. Now, the percent heavy vehicles is a direct input. So a 2-lane roadway, we figure is going to operate differently, whether it has 1%, 5%, or 10% trucks. And that's another big change that you see in this procedure. So then let's talk about pedestrians, and both at mid-block, unsignalized, and then signalized intersections. And the way I would describe what's new here is to try to talk about the history a little bit. In going back many, many years ago, the pedestrian procedures were based on just sheer number of pedestrians you could fit into a given space, like a crowded sidewalk, for example. And that was really only applicable in places like New York City or downtown San Francisco, where you have lots and lots of pedestrians. And that was felt that was all that was needed at the time. And as we progressed forward, some of the procedures in the early 2000s were oriented more towards the pedestrian's experience, and what is the pedestrian's experience of being on the roadway? Is there a lot of traffic? Is it close by? Is the sidewalk wide enough? So on and so forth. Now with the HCM7, it's kind of a combination of both, where if you have a capacity problem with the pedestrians, that's going to be reflective. But also if there are user characteristics where the pedestrian doesn't feel comfortable or has a long delay, all that's factored into a score that tells you what the level of service is for the facility. And in addition to that, at signalized intersections, the HCM7 expands the universe of signalized intersections. So the HCM6 was kind of focused on individual intersections and crossing one leg at a time, whereas the new HCM7 method, you can look at diagonal crossings. The barn dance is what those were called, or perhaps still are called, or multiple crossings of intersections, or multiple crossings of the intersection. So you can look at something like what happens if you prohibit pedestrians on one or more approaches. What would that be like for the pedestrian's experience? So next, we move on to network analysis. And what this focuses on is the interaction between facility types, which has never been done in the highway capacity manual before. And so if you look at the picture on the left side, you could have a trip that travels down an arterial, gets on a freeway, gets off the freeway, and gets on another arterial. That trip is going to experience multiple types of facilities. And if they're operating at relatively low capacities, that's probably not a big deal. But if there is high delays, queuing, and so on, spill back onto the facilities, that's going to be felt by the user, but it's also a safety and operational problem. So it's a very very big concern among agencies that maintain roadways. And so this procedure now looks at that problem in a step-by-step way, and calculating the queues and what the effects are on each facility. This is something that's been done historically, probably mostly by simulation, but with the highway capacity manual procedure, you get a different perspective on this, where you can look at the nuts and bolts and the individual interactions of the vehicles and facilities and kind of get insight into how everything works. And so this is just a different way of diagramming out what that looks like. Each of the facilities is kind of mapped out with the number of lanes and the distance between intersections and keeping track of the queuing and so on. It also keeps track of travel time as a common performance measure, so you can look at the individual user and the trip through the network, in addition to how the queuing affects the different systems. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up. If you're interested in what you're seeing here, or if you're interested in the general topic of highway capacity, I mentioned the Committee on Highway Capacity and Quality of Service. We're always looking for new members, new ideas, and people are welcome to participate either by getting on board and becoming a friend or a subcommittee member or a committee member, or just by casually dropping into our meetings to stay informed. And we meet once a year at the annual Transportation Resource Board meeting in Washington in January. So if you're signed up for the TRB meeting, you can just drop by into our committee meeting or subcommittee meetings and see what's going on. We also meet in the mid-year every summer at a location that rotates around. This summer, we're going to be meeting in Orange County, Irvine, in late August, so not too far away from many of the folks on this webinar. And that's we met online during the pandemic, so this will be our first in-person mid-year meeting coming up this summer. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are more detailed presentations on this topic that I've been talking about, and so you can search out some of the information there. And as I mentioned, you can become a friend of the committee or attend committee meetings. If you want to do that from a distance, rather than actually dropping into the committee meeting, you can go to the website that's noted there, it's hcqstrb.org. But if you go into any search engine and search for Highway Capacity Committee or TRB Highway Capacity Committee, I'm sure you'll find us. So I think we do have time for questions. One sort of qualifier I'll put on this is that the Highway Capacity Manual is a big manual. I don't know every detail of it. I'm sure some of you can stump me, but if you do, I can let you know who to talk to about getting any more information on any particular topic. But I'm always happy to give my opinions on anything and answer any questions that I've talked about. So with that, I am open to questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. And excellent presentation as well. If you do have questions for Eric, and I hope we have some good questions cooking up, please feel free to type them in the chat and we can just kind of work our way through them. I'm glad to see that the HCM is continuing to be updated and got some new exciting methods and very important updates in there, but also selfishly, I'm a little bit excited that some of the core things haven't changed. So we don't have to worry about, as practitioners, like, oh, it's a brand new way to do intersection LOS or something like that. So I guess as we wait to see if any questions pop up in the chat, one question I have is kind of going deep under the hood to the assumptions of the HCM. One thing I've heard is a lot of the critical assumptions for things like acceleration rates and deceleration rates, speaking of intersection LOS, are based on characteristics of vehicles from the 1950s and 60s. And I was wondering if there's been any murmurs among the committee or anything on the back end about potentially updating some of these assumptions for more modern vehicles.
No, I haven't heard that topic come up, and I think our general assumption is that that the vehicles are not terribly different, and then the drivers also have a lot to do with the acceleration, deceleration, and so on. But if we were, the way that the those kinds of studies are done, or that kind of information is obtained, is by going out to intersections and measuring vehicles. So it would not be an exercise in, you know, looking at, you know, does a Tesla accelerate faster than a Toyota? It would be going out and measuring the stream of traffic. So with whatever Teslas and Toyotas and any other vehicles that show up, looking at things like the saturation flow and the startup loss time and that sort of thing.
Excellent. Ron asks, any mention of road diets and traffic calming effects on capacity?
Road diets and traffic calming effects. No, I don't believe there is anything specifically on that. Now, a road diet is basically a conversion of a roadway from one type of facility to another. I mean, I think it's most commonly used for a 4-lane road that goes to a 2-lane road with a center left turn lane. But the term itself doesn't imply that it has to be that way. So I think for now, the highway capacity manual would certainly allow you to analyze both types of facilities, kind of the before and after. And so that's how you would look at a road diet. The traffic calming, I think, is an area that's unexplored. I mean, I think the typical assumption is that you're only going to calm a street that that is, you know, nowhere near levels of capacity. But on the other hand, I know, even though this hasn't been addressed in the highway capacity manual, and maybe it could be someday, but there's the question of, and I've looked into this outside the highway capacity manual in different ways, but the question of, you know, if you have a certain type of residential street, you know, what kind of traffic is too much? You know, is 1,000 ADT, is 2,500 ADT, is 5,000 ADT too much for that type of street? And people have attempted at times to, you know, kind of put together capacity tables and so on. And but it's never been researched in the way that it's done in the highway capacity manual. And that might be an interesting new topic that we might look at someday.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question from Luther Muiz. I'm always amazed at California Route 160. How can scenic routes and capacity work together?
Let's see, I'm vaguely aware of Highway 160, so I'm going to kind of focus on the more general part of that question. There is a whole topic of what happens on this may be a little bit of a tangent, but what happens on a 2-lane roadway as it transitions from rural conditions to going through small towns. And that's something that's being researched right now that hasn't been incorporated into the highway capacity manual. But the 2-lane highway procedure that I mentioned now gives you the opportunity to look at scenic roadways versus more capacity related roadways differently. So I think for now we're kind of stuck with segmenting the facility into different types and saying this is a scenic 2-lane road with little passing opportunities, and this is a larger roadway, and looking at the different segments and how they operate. But there is interest in the future in looking at particularly 2-lane roadways as they transition back and forth from rural areas into towns, and, you know, where are the real capacity constraints on that kind of roadway. Perfect.
Ryan Caldera asks, for pedestrian LOS, how is, quote, satisfaction defined?
Some of the historical research and some of the current research has kind of looked at this in the same way. They basically will they'll take people out, very, very small numbers of people, kind of focus groups out to different intersection types and ask them, you know, how do you feel about this location? And they'll also do surveys, you know, sometimes with video or just written questions, but basically asking people, what's your level of satisfaction with this type of facility? And they'll kind of put those all together, because as you imagine, you know, one person might be totally happy on a you know, 5-foot sidewalk, and another might be totally claustrophobic. So, but they take the, you know, sort of the average of those different values, and so it's you know, the bottom line is it's kind of based on user surveys, all, you know, averaged together.
Sean Carney asks, with the updates to include individual lane analysis in the freeway section for entrances and exits, has there been any update to the managed lanes methodology that was first introduced with the 6th edition? I found the managed lanes methodology does not deal well with continuous access HOV, HOT lanes, where speeds can vary significantly between general purpose and managed lanes.
Yeah, I think that to answer the question, it hasn't changed as far as I know, and that is one of the areas where you know, I think further research is definitely needed. The You know, even though it's only a few years old, the managed lane research goes back to a time where there weren't as many managed lane facilities out there, and I think update is definitely needed. So I will take that back to the committee. That's something we need to look at.
Excellent. Frank Markowitz asks, for the CAV adjustment for streets or intersections, is there attention to how automated vehicles might interact differently with pedestrians? Perhaps automated vehicles reacting more cautiously than most drivers today, but some pedestrians less cautious.
Boy, that's one that I actually don't know the answer to, and I do know that it is it's an area of much discussion among the on the side, not on the highway capacity research side, but in the area of how do connected and automated vehicles interact with pedestrians. They're really trying to solve the problem of how do you indicate, if you're a pedestrian, how do you indicate that, how do you get the vehicle to indicate what it wants to do? Because with human drivers, you know, you can kind of make eye contact and wave and that kind of thing. I have seen some sort of early demonstrations of vehicles where they have these, you have a connected, an automated vehicle where you kind of got these green lights that flash, and the green light means I'm going, and the red light means, you know, pedestrian, you can go. They're really trying to solve that. So I would say whatever we do or don't have, it's not very evolved, and I wouldn't count on it too much just yet.
All right, I'll not plan on it. Matthew Ju asks, is there any interest in developing a methodology to analyze short weaving areas on surface streets between signalized intersections?
Yes, that is coming up. In our terminology, we call that arterial weaving, and I don't know the exact schedule, but that's something that's being researched. So we should, you know, hopefully, I mean, every once in a while a research project will fail to come to a conclusion, but I'm optimistic that's going to be available to us in a future HCM.
Well, excellent. Glad to hear that we've got some upcoming things to look forward to. I'm not seeing any additional questions, so unless any pop up here at the last minute, I think that does it for the question and answer. So thank you everyone who is here. It was excellent to see representation from 3 of our various sections around the state. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you, especially big thanks to Erik for these updates and for keeping us posted as to the latest and greatest and what's to come, the future of the HCM. And so,
thanks.
So with that, I think we conclude this meeting. Thank you.